Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. With the 250th YCS happening this weekend and taking place all over the world, I figured I would discuss some last minute things that are really important to keep in mind. Tech cards, decks, just important stuff to look out for and to be mindful of when you're playing. Also, to anyone that's going, I wish you the best of luck, and not just luck, I hope you just do well with all of the preparation you put in, and hopefully this video will help you. So the first thing I wanted to mention is Sprite. Basically, Sprite just started to be so loved and popular by people. Like, people just started to turn back to Sprite because it went down in price, and it's this tried and true deck that was good before the elf ban and even has a lot of potential moving forward. There's Melfi variants, there's Adventure Sprite, there's Toad lines with the Testudo, and I think if you know a deck like this is going to be very popular, which you can tell by a lot of events, regionals and stuff like that taking place in the recent weeks, you need to be prepared for those combos. So you literally, I think at least, need to familiarize yourself with the different versions of Sprite, with the different combos it's going to be able to go for. Because like I said before, the deck is a bit more budget friendly than it was upon release and in the last couple of months. So a lot of people will turn back to Sprite, and I think it's important to keep that deck in mind. Then the next card I wanted to discuss is Shifter. It's a really important card because Kashtira can play it, and Kashtira is going to have a high representation. And it also hurts a lot of decks that might be your choices for the event. So if you're running something like Runic or Methmec or whatever it may be that's hurt by Shifter, you probably should go over some lines that you can play and, play out and try to play out at least when you're under Shifter, or counters to it like Gamma, because Shifter is probably going to be dropped in your standby phase or something like that. So I think it's a really important card to think about if your deck really gets hurt by it. So the next couple of things pretty much go hand in hand. It's just, it could be summarized as just one sentence. Diversify your interruptions against Kashtira. Because right now, even Kashtira players are confused. Like, literally, you cannot know what kind of plays to go for because you won't know what your opponent is going to side against you. So if you're trying to side against Kashtira, something to keep in mind is that they use lands, so a lot of times cards like Book of Eclipse might not be as effective. There's Kaijus as an option, there's Nibiru as an option. And Nibiru is really weird because it gets better when people aren't prepared for it. And with the trend being people going for a Rise Hard Pass, then in the mind of other players, there might be that they're going to side Nibiru because people might try to go heavy on their combos, expecting the opponents to side against an Rise Hard Pass. So if you're the Kashtira player and you think, okay, so they're going to side Kaijus against me, I'm just going to go full combo, no one's gonna have Nibiru. But then consequentially, some people will play Nibiru because they'll view it as a surprise factor at the 250th YCS. So I think it's important to really theorize and go through all of that. And it also depends on whether or not you're playing Kashtira or trying to counter Kashtira. So in my opinion, Nibiru is going to be really strong right now because it doesn't hurt just Kashtira, but there's other decks as well. And overall, Kaijus, in my opinion, are also really strong because a lot of people will still go for a Rise Hard Pass. And there's also a lot of other monsters right now, like Naturia Beast, Dragoon. There's a lot of rogue decks. So if you're trying to play a Marincess, an Adignister, or something like that at the 250th YCS, you may want to change your mind in some of your plays, because if you end on only one monster that's going to be like your end board, your go-to thing, and it just gets Kaiju, you pretty much lose. So you probably need to think about what happens if I get Kaiju right now. I probably should sort of adjust my board because Kaijus are going to be sided against all of the Kashtira players. So if people see that they're good against your deck, they are going to side them in the games 2 and 3. And speaking of side cards, the next one I wanted to mention is Dark Ruler. It's going to be more popular because it really hurts Sprite and because it's also good against a lot of different matchups. And we're back to those one monster boards because Dark Ruler really helps if you're going up against Rise Hard Pass, Naturia Beast, Dragoon, everything I mentioned before. So with Sprite getting popularity, this card is going to be gaining popularity as well. So again, you maybe want to side it, and you also maybe want to tailor your deck accordingly so you don't lose to it if it gets used against you. Now the next random thing that I just wanted to include in this video is also a ruling. So if you're playing Runic and you're trying to protect your board with Hugin, You cannot. Also, I don't know if I'm pronouncing Hugin correctly. I don't really care, but you probably know which card I'm talking about. So even if my pronunciation sucks, it's just what it is. So if you're trying to protect with this card, but the card itself is marked for destruction as well with something like a Mirror Jade End Phase wipe or whatever it may be, you cannot actually protect. So if a card is marked for destruction, it's not going to be able to protect. The only instance in which it can protect is if Runic Slumber was used beforehand on it, because it says that the first time it will be destroyed, it's not. So in that case, it's able to protect. So make sure your opponent doesn't cheat you and try to protect if you're trying to pop their entire field already. Another random ruling is that a lot of times if you're going up against a Trap Tricks player, the whole cards are going to be missing timing because most of them have one effect. And I actually read this on Judges Lounge, and shout out to the group and that post because it inspired me to include this in this video. A lot of monsters right now, like Long Yun or Drychon monsters, and with the high diversity of decks, there's other ones as well. Their effects are sequential, meaning that not everything happens at the same time. So Long Yun, for example, gets summoned, then the token gets summoned. So if you're trying to use like a Floodgate Trap Hole or whatever it may be on the summon of Long Yun, you cannot do it because it would miss timing, and you cannot do it on the token summon, of course, because it can go face down. So make sure to not get cheated. Also, if you're playing Drychon and executing the search as well, it's going to be missing timing again because the last thing that happened is the search, not the summon. So a lot of times just reading cards is going to get you a long way. And yeah, just make sure you don't get cheated. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is Gamma. Gamma has been seeing a lot of play in Sprite. It's a really good extender. In MethMech, a lot of players tend to run it. It's also a good counter to Shifter. Some people even play it in Kashtira. And I just wanted to mention that if you know you're going up against one of those decks, especially if you saw Gamma in the match already, you probably want to play around it if it really seems obvious they're trying to get you to play into it. Like I remember in Dragon Link format, like every single player would go Chaos Space, of course, because it's a busted card, and you probably wouldn't Ash it because if they have Gamma, they have immense pluses. If you had to Ash it, sure, a lot of times you probably had to. And it was also a weird time to use Ash because it was kind of not that great against Dragon Link. But all of that, saying all of that just to say that a lot of times if you're going up against a deck and they go Starter or Prosperity or a card like this that doesn't put a monster on the board just yet, they might be baiting you and trying to use Gamma. That's also going to give them extenders, not just a random Gamma driver board. So you really need to think about whether or not you're trying to lose to Gamma, or you need to use an Ash, or if you're just getting baited into not using an Ash or an interruption so they get their effects off. So yeah, just pretty much keep in mind that Gamma is a thing. It's in the format, and just try to play around it if you can. If you can't, then there's really nothing you can do about it. And that's pretty much going to be it. Hopefully I covered everything. I think I covered the most important cards right now, but if there's anything I missed, any deck, any ruling, anything, I think people would be gladly reading this in the comments down below. So if you come up with anything, make sure to include it in the comments. And if you liked the video overall, or you feel like you learned something, please make sure to let me know and like it, sub, check out all the social media, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.